Welcome to this lecture titled From Tools to Collaborators: The Changing Nature of Human AI Interaction. At the heart of this lecture lies a simple but pressing question. What happens to the way we work when digital systems move from being mere tools to being collaborators in the problem-solving process? For a long time, software mainly functioned as a tool that you instruct and it executes. Today, large language models and AI assistants can answer in ordinary language, generate new content, and remember context across a sequence of exchanges, making them feel more like partners than passive instruments. This shift is not about claiming that AI thinks like a human, but about how the interaction itself changes the work. Rather than issuing a precise command and awaiting a fixed result, people increasingly engage in dialogue, iterating, refining, and moving forward together with the system. The lecture sets up a contrast between traditional tools and AI assistants and asks what that difference means for everyday use, for the practices of work, and for how we should design such systems. We will encounter a move from tools that merely execute to collaborators that participate in shaping the work, with roles that include assistant, advisor, interpreter, and co-creator. The aim is to think clearly about what it means to treat AI as a workplace collaborator and to consider the implications for how we learn to use, supervise, and shape these systems as they become part of the workflow. Now let us begin with the section called Framing the Shift. For a long time, digital technology has mainly been seen as a tool. People use software to write documents, calculate numbers, store information, draw designs, and manage work. In most cases, the relationship is simple. The user gives instructions, and the system carries them out. A spreadsheet calculates a formula, a word processor formats text, and a database returns search results. The system helps, but it does not take part in the task in any deeper way. New AI systems, especially large language models and AI assistants, are changing this picture. These systems can answer questions in ordinary language, suggest ideas, summarize information, and help people work through problems step by step. Because of this, they often feel different from older software. Instead of acting only as tools, they can seem more like partners in the work. This does not mean that AI thinks like a human or understands the world in the same way people do, but it does mean that the interaction feels different. People do not always use AI by giving one precise instruction and getting one fixed result. Instead, they often work with it through dialogue. They ask, adjust, refine, and continue. In that sense, the system becomes part of the work process rather than just something used in the background. Now let us begin with the section called From Traditional Tools to AI Participation. Traditional software tools are built to help users perform specific tasks. Even when they are advanced, they usually follow a clear pattern. The user decides what to do, and the system carries it out. The text identifies several common features. These tools are usually predictable, so the same input normally produces the same result unless the underlying data have changed. They depend on clear instructions, which means the user must specify exactly what the system should do. They also do not usually take initiative. They wait for input and then respond. As a result, the roles are clearly separated. The human decides, and the system executes. In this view, software extends human ability, but it does not participate in the work in the same way a colleague or assistant might. Because traditional tools need clear instructions, they place a great deal of responsibility on the user. The user must know what they want, how to ask for it, and how to understand the result. This means that many digital tools work best for experienced users. A spreadsheet is more useful when the user understands formulas and data. A design program is more useful when the user knows design principles. And a database is more helpful when the user knows what to search for and how to interpret the results. In this way, tools often strengthen existing expertise rather than reduce the need for it. The text then points to one reason AI assistants are interesting. They seem to reduce some of this burden by letting people begin with rough questions or incomplete ideas instead of formal commands. Large language models introduce several abilities that make interaction feel different from traditional software use. The most obvious change is that people can use everyday language rather than formulas, menus, or special commands. Another change is responsiveness to context. In conversation, the system can take earlier messages into account and continue from them. These systems can also generate new content rather than only sort, search, or calculate. In addition, their responses are flexible. What they produce can vary with wording, prior conversation, and the system's interpretation of the user's intention. These differences matter because they change the role of the system. It is no longer only carrying out a task, it may also help shape the task itself. The main difference between older tools and AI assistants is not only speed or convenience. AI assistants can participate more actively in the process. A traditional tool waits for instructions, whereas an AI assistant may suggest next steps, offer alternatives, point out possible problems, or help the user think through an issue. This makes the interaction feel less like operating a machine and more like working with something that contributes to the task. The calculator example shows the contrast clearly. A calculator gives a result, while an AI assistant may explain the issue, compare possibilities, and help refine the question. For this reason, the term collaborator can be useful. At the same time, it must be used carefully, because the system is not a human partner and does not have real understanding, judgment, or responsibility. In workplaces, AI is increasingly used in ways that go beyond simple automation. It can help people complete tasks faster, but it can also support idea exploration, information organization, and sense-making in complex situations. In this role, AI may function as an assistant for routine work, as an advisor by offering suggestions, as an interpreter by making information easier to understand, and as a co-creator by helping generate text, plans, designs, or solutions. This does not mean that AI replaces the human worker. In most cases, it changes how the work is done. Some parts become easier or faster, while other parts become more important, especially checking, judging, and deciding. The key point is that work is not simply removed, it is reorganized. This change can be seen in many kinds of work. A technician may use AI to suggest likely causes of overheating and propose a sequence of checks, while still needing to test and decide. A designer may use AI to generate early ideas, compare alternatives, or improve descriptions of concepts, with AI supporting rather than replacing creativity. A manager may use AI to summarize reports, identify risks, or compare options, which shifts the role toward evaluation and action. A teacher may use AI to simplify explanations, generate examples, or help draft feedback, while still deciding what is correct, suitable, and useful for students. In all of these cases, AI is doing more than following commands. It is helping shape the work as it happens. This captures the central idea of AI as a workplace collaborator. It participates in the ongoing process of work without taking over human responsibility for evaluation and decision. Now let us begin with the section called Conversation, Uncertainty, and Iteration. One of the biggest changes with AI assistants is the move from commands to conversation. With older systems, users often had to click through menus, fill in forms, or use exact search terms. With AI assistants, they can ask questions in a more natural way. They can say what they are trying to do, what they are unsure about, or what kind of help they want. This makes technology easier to approach for many people because someone does not need the same level of technical knowledge to get started. This makes technology easier to approach for many people. Someone does not need the same level of technical knowledge to get started. They can begin with a rough question and improve it over time. So, conversational interfaces lower some barriers to use, especially at the beginning of an interaction. At the same time, conversation can create new challenges. Natural language is often unclear. A user may think they have asked one thing while the system interprets it differently. The answers may also vary from one interaction to another. This means the user still needs to think critically about what the system says. So while conversational interfaces lower some barriers, they also make interpretation more important. Working with AI is often an iterative process. A person asks something, gets a response, adjusts the request, and continues. The answer is rarely final at the first attempt. Instead, the result develops through several rounds. This makes iteration a core mechanism of the interaction. This is very different from traditional tool use. When using a calculator or a database, the goal is often to give the correct instruction immediately. When using AI, the goal is often to move step by step toward a better answer. The interaction, therefore, feels more like a conversation than a command. For non-experts, this is important to understand. Good use of AI is often less about knowing the exact right prompt from the beginning and more about asking, checking, refining, and improving along the way. Users guide the system through review and adjustment rather than through perfect instructions at the start. Now let us begin with the section called How AI Changes Work. People often ask whether AI will replace human work, but this is a misleading question. Most jobs consist of many different tasks, and AI does not usually take over all of them in the same way. The more useful question is how AI changes the way work is carried out. This shifts attention from complete replacement to changes in tasks. In many cases, AI takes over some routine parts of work while increasing the importance of other parts. In writing, this can mean spending less time on a first draft and more time reviewing and improving it. In coding, it can mean less time writing standard code from scratch and more time checking whether generated code is correct and suitable. In data analysis, it can mean less time on basic processing and more time interpreting results. AI can also create new tasks rather than only changing old ones. People may need to learn how to ask useful questions, compare different outputs, verify facts, and judge when the AI is wrong or misleading. So, the effect of AI is often not simple replacement, but a shift in where time, attention, and responsibility are placed. Even when AI becomes more involved in work, responsibility remains with people. This is especially important when decisions affect other people, organizations, or significant outcomes. An AI assistant may suggest a diagnosis, summarize a report, or draft a message, but it cannot be responsible in the human sense. It cannot be held accountable in the way a technician, manager, teacher, or designer can. For this reason, AI should be understood as support rather than authority. Now let us begin with the section called Designing for Human Control and Judgment. This section argues that if AI systems are used more like collaborators, they need to be designed to support good collaboration. Users need to understand what the system is doing and why it is suggesting something. They also need ways to correct it, reject it, or take the work in another direction. The central implication is that a well-designed AI system should help people stay in control. It should support review rather than encourage blind trust, and it should make it easy to question the output and continue the interaction. This section contrasts AI systems with traditional tools. Traditional tools are often trusted because they are predictable, but AI systems can produce useful results while also being partly wrong, misleading, or inconsistent. For that reason, systems should be designed with uncertainty in mind. Users need support for checking information, comparing alternatives, and noticing when something may not be reliable. This is especially important because AI responses can sound confident even when they are mistaken. A helpful design should therefore not only make interaction smooth, but also make careful use possible. This conclusion argues that there is an important shift from seeing technology as a tool to seeing AI as a collaborator. Traditional tools mainly carry out instructions. AI assistants can also do this, but they additionally suggest, explain, adapt, and support users through dialogue. Because of these capacities, AI becomes part of the work process in a new way. The text then explains what this shift means in practice. AI assistants are becoming part of the work process in a new way. People do not only use them to execute tasks, they also use them to explore problems, shape ideas, and refine outcomes. At the same time, the conclusion warns against a misunderstanding AI should not be treated as a replacement for human judgment. It can support work, but it does not remove the need for human responsibility, experience, and critical thinking. The final point is that understanding this shift is important for making sense of modern AI systems. These technologies are not just more powerful tools, they are changing how people work with digital systems, and this affects both everyday practice and system design. The lecture traces a clear arc from viewing technology as a set of tools to seeing AI as a collaborator that participates in the ongoing work. Traditional tools are predictable, require explicit instructions, and keep initiative at bay, assigning human decision and interpretation as the dominant task. AI, by contrast, operates through natural language, maintains context across turns, and can generate and adapt content, so it can suggest next steps, offer alternatives, and help shape problems as they unfold. This redefines interaction as iterative dialogue rather than a single command, and it repositions AI as something that helps refine the work rather than merely executes it. In practical terms, this means routine parts of work can be shifted to the AI, while the human role shifts toward evaluation, judgment, and decision, and, in many cases, toward more advanced tasks like interpretation and sense making. The technology also introduces new tasks for people, learning how to ask useful questions, comparing different outputs, verifying facts, and judging when the system is wrong or misleading. Importantly, AI is not a replacement for human judgment. Responsibility remains with people, especially when outcomes affect others. Designing well for this collaboration requires making the system's behavior understandable, providing ways to correct or redirect it, and supporting careful review rather than blind trust. Acknowledging that AI responses can be partly wrong or misleading, designers should treat uncertainty as a core consideration, building in checks that help users notice and manage unreliability. The central takeaway is that we are witnessing a shift from tools to collaborators. AI can execute, explain, adapt, and co-create, but humans stay in control and accountable. Understanding this shift illuminates how modern AI works in practice and what it means for the design of future digital systems and everyday professional practice.